Alright guys, welcome to another tutorial about substance, but this time we're going to talk about how to bring substance in Maya and work with Arnold renderer. What we have now is already built graph with a leather material, and it's very simple. We just have some base folding, base paddle folding here, did some curve to reshape it. We add some extra folding to the surrounding, and that's those guys, and then some more folding for the buttons. It's our tile sampler thing, and then we add some Perlin noise to give it some noise, and when we create some tile sampler to just repeat a tilted paraboloid texture, and then we just did some trick to get that noise that looks like a leather, and that's repeated and then applied on top of the model to get the noise or the pattern here. And we just add some straps by using also tile sampler, and we just add another button, and that's the head map. And then moving down to the color part, we just used all those masks from the head map to build the variations for the color. And moving down to the roughness rod, we have some variations also, and eventually the metallic because the button is actually metal. Okay, that's all there is for this. So we're gonna go grab the leather and just publish it. Okay, I'm going to publish here in the source image folder and leather material folder in my Maya project. Okay, put it in here, and then you can use the default setting for all these things. All right, now back here to Maya, I'm going to go to the window, setting and preferences, plugin manager, and you want to search for substance, and make sure that you have those two things checked down to be able to use substance. You should be able to also see you have substance menu here. Anyway, now go to window, node editor, and I'm going to dock it over here. Okay, now I'm going to create some object to use to actually have the texture applied. So I'm going to go for a sphere here underneath polymodeling and just grab the model and Alt Shift D to get rid of the history, and then I don't even need to see those two things, so I'm gonna kick those out. Okay, now we can hit tab button and search for substance. Okay, and we look for substance texture, and then we grab the substance one here, and then we go to the substance files and then load that leather.sbsar. That's the one we exported or published from substance designer here by doing this. Okay, now back here to Maya, we just load it. Okay, so a few things we need to make sure that we do before we get those textures, but you can already see we have base color. So resolution, of course, is going to be over here. Okay, if I can ever click on it. Okay, change that to 2K. And also, I don't want to create shader network or export image. I just wanted to use a custom build. It's using Stanley PBS as the default setting. I don't know why. This is the dead game engine, so don't use that. Use custom. I hope there is gonna be a Arnold setting, but we don't for now yet. But I'm hoping in the future that they will have an Arnold preset. But for now, we just use custom. One more thing we want to go for is go down to the automatic baking, go to automatic connection, make sure that you check it. Format will be Tagar, and then use Maya project folder. What this does is going to tell Substance to generate a actual file into the project folder when you generate those different maps. So that way, when Arnold is rendering, it doesn't need a physical file on the disk because it needs to convert that into a .tx file. So that's required for Arnold renderer. For Maya's native materials, it should be fun, but you know, whoever use that anyways. So that's something you have to check out. I'm not sure about Viri. Viri should be able to say, be okay with just, you know, without that. That's something I'm not sure yet. But in Arnold, you have to do this. Okay, cool. So now what we do is we grab the substance node and we click on the base color. You can see what it does is going to create a base color substance TGA file node which loads the base color. Okay, that's all we have to do to get the base color out. Same thing can be done for everything else. So normal map. Okay, roughness, metallic, head map, and AO. Okay, you can see all 5 maps are exported. We can hit V button. Actually, that doesn't work. Can hit V button here maybe to preview what they are. You can see we have all those different textures. All right, cool. So one more thing for the normal map, if I do remember that correctly, in the substance, let's see, engine normal format. We cannot change it here for some reason. Anyway, we'll be able to fix that later on when we're connecting our materials. So to start with, we need to have a shader. So I'm gonna hit tab button and type in AI standard surface. Use this one, okay, and grab this AI standard surface 1SG shading group. Middle mouse drag it over to the sphere here to assign the material. Okay, and then we can start connecting our textures to our material. So grab the material here and you find base color and middle mouse drag it over to the color. Okay, now for the norm map, it has to go into the geometry, right? And then bump map, middle mouse drag it over here. Okay, and that's gonna create a bump 2D node. And that goes to the AI standard surface. I'm not sure why do we have these, so let me kick those guys out. This should be my original layout and my material here. Okay, now we have the norm map and the bump map connected. Okay, bump map 2D then requires to, and if you don't want those guys to move, you grab everything and you lock them by hitting the P button to pin them, so Maya wouldn't be able to move them anymore. Okay, anyway, so back here to the bump map 2D, we have to change it to tangent space normal. And then for the normal map file itself, it has to be raw. And luckily, Substance does that for you if you use this plugin. So you can see everything else actually except the base color are raw format for color space. Okay, actually not AO. Anyway, so we can go start connecting. Again, the roughness goes, of course, to the roughness channel. That's going to be underneath specularity roughness. Now, this has to be a little bit more tedious. You drag it over here and you go to the viewport, you hit 6 button to show the texture. You can kind of like feel like it doesn't really looks like that roughness we defined. That's because it's using alt alpha. But what we really need is actually the alt color. Okay, there are two solutions. One is you go to the color balance, you check on alpha is luminous. Actually, Substance does that for you. Then that's okay, then you can just keep it as it is. But if you're using a texture exported from Substance from scratch, from scratch, you have to check that out when you're using raw format. And because it's using alpha, so alpha has to be luminous to be able to actually accurately transfer the data over to the shader. So metallic should also have that then. Great. So we drag metallic to mellowness of the material, and then we have height map and ambient occlusion. So those two things has to be done in different ways. So let's just use what we have now and take a look at what we got by doing a quick render. Oh, one more thing. I kind of wanted to repeat the texture more. So I'm going to grab the place 2D texture 1 node. I'm going to change the repeat U to 4 and repeat V to 2. It's going to update everything. So that's going to take a little while to calculate. The good thing about it is it is really updating also the files on the disk. Okay, cool. So now what we can do is we can set up a, let's go to the Arnold section, set up a environment lighting or sky down light and go to color here, and we can go to file and load a texture to the image. And that can be something that is a HDR. So I do have an HDR image here. So I'm going to use that Alex apartment. I'm going to use the environment. This one, this is a 2K one should be fine, just to be able to see a little bit more detail and open it. You can grab any HDR you want, because that's the easiest setup to have something, have some lighting there. I'm going to turn on the rendering resolution gate. I think I can go ahead and actually tweak it. So I'm gonna go for, instead of a 16:9 aspect ratio, I'm gonna go for a 1K square. That way when we're rendering, we can just see the ball really easily. So let's zoom in and do our first render by clicking that rendering button. Okay, and you can see this is what we have. All right, so everything seems to be working just fine. We have the normal map, we have everything else, and you can see the roughness is almost exactly like what we defined. Okay, and they have some really cool a reflection from the environment. Of course, we can make it a little bit more brighter, so I'm going to go ahead and change that. So that's going to be in the lighting, so I'm going to grab those guys. That's the lighting nodes. Okay, and go grab the light shape, and we can change the exposure to something like 1, actually 2, to make it stronger. Okay, and then let's do one more render to make it brighter here. Okay, now one thing you should be aware of is that in Maya or in Arnold renderer, you're rendering based on the resolution. So unless your resolution is higher enough, you probably cannot see as much detail as the detail you see in Substance, because Substance is rendering in real time. When you zoom in, it does actually crank up the resolution also. So it's not going to be able to represent enough detail if your rendering resolution is not high enough. But as you can see, this is basically almost like what we have in Substance. It's a different lighting situation, so it's hard to judge, but we're basically getting the information we need. Okay, cool. So let's talk about the height map. So let me go ahead and kick those guys out. For the height map, it has to be done in a very different way. The height map here has to be actually applied as displacement map. So what you do is you grab the shading group here. You can double click to force it to update in the attribute editor. You minimal drag the height map to the displacement map. Okay, something got created and got really far away. I'm gonna grab this guy, hit 3 button to open it and drag it back, and immediately hit P button to pin it and hit 1 button to close it. So when you connect any texture to the displacement slot, it's going to create this displacement shader, and this one determines the displacement. Okay, and the height map will be used to do that. You can see it's also using alt alpha as displacement. Okay, so if you take a look at that, you can see alpha is luminance has to be on, and we have to use the raw format. Okay, cool. And then also to be able to see that displacement, and by the way, displacement is basically the equivalent of tessellation in Substance Designer. So what we do here is we go grab the model and go to Arnold, and then we go scroll down to the subdivision part, and we change the subdivision type to Cat Clark, and then iteration can be 3 or 4. Okay, and that's going to be how much subdivision it's going to be doing, or tessellation basically. Maybe I can change that to 4 just to have a bit better quality. Now one more thing here, underneath the displace attribute, you can also change the auto bump on. Okay, this is going to automatically bump things out if you don't have enough subdivision to represent smaller details. Those smaller details will be represented by a temporarily generated bump map, which is pretty cool actually. Alright, so that should be it. Now let's take a look at what we have. So go ahead and do another render. Okay, you can see things are bulging out like crazy. That means it's working, it's just having too much intensity. That's when we need to go back and tweak the displacement shader to change the scale to something like 0.2 to minimize that effect. Do another render. Okay, you can see now we have the bump out. You can already feel like the bumpness is actually feels like a bit strong. Okay, that's because we have both norm map and height map or displacement map, so that part is getting exaggerated. In this case, we could actually say if we're using height map or displacement map, we could actually not use the norm map anymore, because that norm map doesn't have more information. The reason being is because if you go back and take a look at Substance Designer, you can see, well, the norm map is derived from the information that the height map got, right? So it's derived from the height map anyways. So you don't get extra information by using norm map anyways. So if you're using height map, you basically you basically can choose to break the bump map. So what you can do is you can hold down Alt and Shift and drag out a line to cut that connection from bump 2D to the shader. That's going to dismiss or disconnect the input from the norm map. Now we can do another render. You can see now we're getting a much better intensity for the bump, for the bumpness. All right, cool. So that's how you use the height map. Now moving on from there, another thing we haven't used yet is the AO. Okay, now there's no AO slot here in the AI standard surface. Okay, so that's something you have to integrate into the system yourself. So based on are you gonna do a post-processing or compositing later on, you could actually not having AO here, because that means you're hard coding AO into the texture, and that oftentimes is not a very good idea. Okay, because in the compositing, then you can control how much AO you have. You can actually render a AO channel. In fact, you can also check it right away. Oops, I don't want it to be in there. You can already check it if you go to the view and then or window toolbar icons and show debug shading icons, and you can change shading to AO occlusion. You can see this is it doing that? Doing one more render. You can see AO can be actually rendered, and this AO is more accurate is because it's representing the actual lighting environment. It's more accurate than that AO we're using here. So I would recommend, if you have a complete production pipeline, compositing should be one of the steps, and you just don't have AO here because you don't want it to be hard-coded. This AO is having a lot of darkness in it. So, but in case you don't really use compositing, then you can integrate your AO, of course, inside of the material. So what you do is you grab the AO, the ambient occlusion. Actually, you don't have to grab it, but you just need to create a multiply divide node. Okay, and you multiply the AO on top of the base color. So you minimum drag this guy over to the input one, and you have to choose to use the out color to the input one and close that. Same thing goes to the base color. So you minimum drag the base color to the input 2 and then use out color to input 2. Okay, that way we're basically multiplying those two together in the multiply divide. The output will be then the color, so you minimum drag it over to the color. All right, now you can see we are already seeing the multiplication happening, and we can do another render to take a look at that. The AO then will be let me go back to the shading mode. You can see now we have the extra AO effect multiplied on top, but you can also see that AO is too dark. It's making the buttons completely dark. Okay, so that's why I don't like about it. So to fix that, then you have to make the AO not being that strong. We can go to the texture node, and there is a color offset. We can offset that up to make the AO brighter. Okay, and that way it's not completely like black on those concave areas. And we can do another render, and you can see now it just got a little bit better. Okay, you can see now we have more shininess on the button. All right, cool. Let's zoom in and take a look at what we have. We click the render to update it. All right, so another thing you probably will be seeing here is that the hat map is not gonna have a very good result just because it's 8-bit and we're using 16-bit for displacement. So you will see some of the imperfections when you're getting really close. So that's one thing to be aware of. Okay, so if you take a look at the hat map, or go to this one here, we're using the raw data, but the raw data, because it's 8-bit, it's not going to be able to give you the full 16-bit information. Okay, so back here to the substance here, we can take a look at the settings here, and let's see if we can find some setting for that. Maybe not. Oh, the format is JPEG in this case. We can update that to TGA. Okay, and then let's see if that helps, because JPEG is not able to contain the information there. So I'm gonna go to the hat map here and just simply delete it, and then we can go back to the substance and redo the hat map by clicking on it, and this time it's gonna generate. Okay, let's see what it does. It's doing something weird. I don't really need those guys, just need that hat substance texture here. So let me bring those guys back. Let's see if we can use the Targar format instead of using the, actually those are all Targar. Maybe this is not going to work properly either, but let's try. So minimal drag it to the displacement. We're using alt alpha, we're using the raw format, and we're using alpha is luminous. Okay, let's take a look at that. Do a quick render. Okay, we're still seeing those things. So that hat map is not going to be proper enough then for this setup. Okay, because displacement map really need a higher bit depth. Okay, so unless there's a way to change it here, I don't really see there's a way to do it here. Okay, so that means we probably need to get it out from Substance, because in Substance we can use this 16-bit. Okay. All right, so let's try that. 16-bit should have more information, so I'm gonna save it. And this time, because we're saving it, let me paste my project folder here. So if you want to get the accurate information, we need to use a higher bit rate. I'm gonna go use also a higher format, so that's gonna be XR format. Okay, I'm gonna call this guy height, leather hat underscore height, and I'm gonna put it into the leather material folder and save it. All right, that's gonna give me a 16-bit format information, and let's try to swap that out. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab that height substance node and delete it because we don't need it anymore. And here, I'm gonna go swap it out to be my new leather material and leather height map. This one is 16-bit XR, so I'm gonna go open it. Okay, and then it's still gonna be raw. It's still gonna be using alpha is luminous. Okay, but let's take a look at this one. This one is created from scratch, right? We exported from Substance using the higher level of information. You can see what we're getting here, right? You can see that difference. So the bit depth is actually pretty important to get the correct information. Okay. So if you really want to get all the details you have from Substance, 16-bit is the format you go, especially for hat map. For roughness and everything else, 8-bit could be fun, but this is for the hat map. It just have to be that way. Otherwise, you just don't have all the details. All right, so that should be it for everything I want to talk about for this transformation from Substance to Arnold renderer. Okay, so I hope that all the information here should help you to actually make better material instead of Arnold, because it's always a hassle or some trouble to get the well-made material instead of Substance to Maya. And I think part of the things we should blame is that they don't really have compatible shaders. So although they're trying to give you something similar, but you can never really get the same result from Substance to Maya just because the shader is fundamentally different. So you can just get as close as possible and you tweak it afterwards. You use different nodes to make it look a little bit better. Okay, like for example, if I can go here and say ambient occlusion can be weaker, you could do that. Grab the AO and you lower down or you crank up the color offset so it's not multiplying on top that much. All right, cool. I'm gonna stop the video now, and you can go ahead and give that a try, and let me know in the comment if you have other ideas on how to approach this better. Okay, thanks for watching. See you next time.